are we sure about what confrontation means in each one of these scenarios? And the last question is, why now? I think this is somewhat a spurious question, to be honest with you. Simply because anybody following the Middle East more generally, there is this discourse that the Middle East is this place where nothing happens, where people are just depressed, and blah, blah, blah. This is not true at all. People have been fighting these regimes for years. Okay, so it is a cumulative effect. It is something that, there is a critical mass for everything. There is a time for everything. And it just happened to be the case that 2011, or the end of 2010 and the beginning of 2011, was the time for Tunis and Egypt and Libya. But there are other examples that, so what I mean to say is, it's not like these things have just sprung up overnight. That is not the case. In the case of Egypt, people have been working against this regime for a very long time, but in terms of direct action, we can at least trace it back to 2001. So there's been a decade of direct confrontation with the regime in Egypt. And I would assume that's a similar case in Libya. We have the case 77, Benghazi, and all those people that were killed. It's not something that's just happened overnight. Quite the opposite. So, that's me.
Ahmed, you said something that you want to comment on?
If I talk about, I don't know, maybe the Libya case, or your first question, it's, if you know the resources that Libya has, it's beyond imagination. And if you know the population, you'll be shocked. And if you know the size of the country, you'll be even more shocked. It's a huge country. It's a big, massive country in Africa. It's the 4th largest country in Africa. It's the richest country in terms of population, because the population is only 6 million. So for those who are pro-Gaddafi, for example, the advocates or whoever speaks on behalf of the regime itself, is they've been paid so much, they've been involved in so much debt. That's unbelievable. If I tell you one story in one prison, in Buslein prison, and it's a massacre that took place in 1996, up until this day, no one, and I mean no one, was held accountable for that. 1,200 prisoners in the space of 2 hours shot dead. I mean, figure that out for yourself. 1,200. And it's not something hidden. It was out there. To Tony Blair, who hugged this person, to Brown, to the West, to whoever gave him Russia, who gave him weapons, to this mad guy. And no one, and I mean no one up until this day. And that's why we're asking for our freedom, to bring these people down. And those who are speaking for the regime, some of them, many of them, are not Libyans, believe it or not. When you heard about foreign mercenaries, the easiest nationality you can get is the Libyan passport. Believe it or not. With £500, you get a Libyan passport, and you will travel. And it's confidential, it's definite, it's everything that you can hope for. So those, Africa is a very rich country, Libya, sorry, and Africans are desperate. So they come, and I'm sure you've seen, 1.5 million Egyptians in Libya, and about 1 million of other African origins, Tunisia, Algeria, from everywhere, and the population of Libya is 6 million only. And we live in a dire situation, believe it or not. The maximum, the Green Book, if you know, the Green Book, if you've heard of it, it's the holy book for Gaddafi. And if you know that, if you read some of the statements, a household cannot earn more than £400 in a month. That's the state. You accept it, you protest, you're gonna die. This is what you're gonna get. This is what I say. And this is the whole revolution of 1969. So that's the story of Libya. I can go on forever. I don't think there is a state in the whole world that exists like Libya. This guy saw himself as God, believe it or not. And if you heard his statements, he never talks of the Libyan people. He only talks about the others, and that he's greater than anybody else. I mean, you know the story of Lockerbie. You know the story of the British police officer who died in this country by Libyans. You've heard about the stories of him assassinating people everywhere in the world. So he's the terrorist guy. I know maybe I've gone off the question, but why now, for example, I go to the other question is that we've seen enough. Believe it or not, we've seen more than enough. People been tortured. If you talk about 50,000 prisons, I guarantee you there's at least 100,000 who've been killed and no one knows anything about it. Up until this day, this protest, day after day, people being kidnapped. But what are they used for? I don't know if these guys are humans or not, and I don't think they are humans. And if he called us drug addicts, I think he's got some crazy drugs in his mind. I don't know where he gets them from, but this guy is a nutter. And I'm sorry for using these words, but this guy, I don't think he even lives in this world. He lives in his own world. There's some of the horror stories, people cannot even describe them. Because sometimes they can't even talk. So why now? I think 42 years, but we've never seen a political system. We've never seen any constitutions. The media is never existing in Libya. There's no representation. He just said it's a people's state. You guys decide. And every time he goes, you people decide, I didn't do anything. And up until this day, he goes, it's your country. Okay, if it's our country, you're asking me to leave. Please take us. But yet he said, it's you. And then he goes, I'll use, and that's the problem of the contradiction. He will use anything in his power, and that's what he's doing right now. And he will do that. And trust me, and take my word for it. It's sad to say, but we've known this system, we've known this mad guy. He will tell the world that that's why you told me to leave, and I'll show you what I can do. And he will do that. And that's why I urge and ask everybody to step up and do something. Whichever way, humanitarian, because this guy is a mad guy, and he will be remembered for, sad to say, but for the worst things that anyone can be remembered for. But yet, the Libyan revolution, we are writing history. The Egyptians, the Tunisians, the whole Middle East, but maybe because I'm biased, maybe because I'm Libyan, but we are truly writing our history all over again. He's destroying the country from, even if it was called a country, I wouldn't call it a country. If you've been to Libya, if you talk about Libya, you want to talk, no one knows anything about Libya apart from Gaddafi. If you say Libya, that's the sad thing. When you talk about Egypt, it's Sharm el-Sheikh, there's Cairo, there's the pyramids. If you talk about Tunisia, there's tourists. If you talk about Libya, there's nothing. Everyone, oh, Gaddafi, yeah? And imagine the frustration that you have. Imagine talking about Britain, Tony, Britain, Cameron. It's a sad reality that we lived in, honestly. And that's, we're asking people, just asking for their freedom. We would rather die, and I don't know if you know the history of Libya, there's a massive, a huge statement that everyone is living right now. From when we took the Italians, or the Italian invasion back in the years, which is 100 years ago. It was 1911, and now it's 2011, so it's 100 years. And the statement is, we will not surrender. And that's what people right now are saying. We will either die, we'll either win or die. This is a simple statement, believe it or not. They lived exactly like everybody else is living right now. Like you, students, engineers, lawyers, solicitors, doctors, nurses, everyone. Is it they're humans exactly? I'm Libyan, and I'm British. And they are living exactly the same life as you are now. But they have this statement, and they don't fear it anymore, believe it or not. I fear for them to die, but they have one simple statement: I don't care. I would rather live in paradise or whatever people believe in, but rather than this oppressed and not being able to talk. I don't know. I'm sure I've done a topic, but it's just something that it just burns inside. And for the first time, I'm able to talk of my country, of my people, and of something that I felt that I belonged to. Well.
Hala, you want to add something?
Can we get back to Spencer's question?
Oh.
No.
Okay.
Reform in the Middle East, complete and utter reform in the Middle East is not possible without reform here. It is not. I mean, the West is so entrenched in our, systems, be it in, Egypt. The US used to send thousands of its prisoners on a yearly basis, and they openly admitted as well to Egypt to be tortured. Their biggest American base outside the US is actually in Qatar. The West is very much entrenched in our systems in the Middle East, and us overthrowing our regimes or our leaders and our dictatorships will not necessarily completely reform our countries unless they are uprooted here at home.
Yeah, can I give an example? Can I give you an example? A good example, actually, just from the recent past. Sorry, then I passed it. You won't believe this. You won't believe it. On the 10th of December, I think it's the 10th of December, 2010 is the commemoration of the Declaration of Human Rights. I think it's the beginning of December. In any case, can you imagine that the European Union, was going ahead with a trade upgrade agreement with Ben Ali, despite the campaign of scores of Tunisian human rights groups and development groups who were against this agreement, not only because it did not make economic sense for Tunis, but simply because it provided this nutcase with legitimacy. And the European Union was totally not interested in this fact, was totally happy to go ahead with an upgrade agreement with a brutal dictator who there's no way of legitimizing this discourse that we have to do business with these people just because we have to. Whether you look at the relationship between the European Union and Tunis, on the verge of this revolution, that's how close it was. They were going ahead with an upgrade agreement while, and 5 days later, Bouazizi is burning himself. So they are totally not interested in what's going on. It's totally above their head. In Bahrain, where, let's not forget, they fired on their own people using British and American weapons. Nobody should forget that. British and American weapons, and the British and the Americans have naval bases in Bahrain. So all of this talk about influencing our allies, all of this talk about having to have relationships with these distasteful regimes, this is rubbish. And it's like one of the courses that I teach here at Sussex. At the end of the course, you're left with this thought, oh yeah, it's capitalism, isn't it? Yeah, right at the end. Yes, it is capitalism, it is power, and those ideas and these power configurations and these economic relationships are primarily for the benefit of Northern Europe and Northern America.
Okay, we have time for another round of questions. You were the first, sir.
I was just in relation to something the camera said. In terms of the relationship between Iran and the West, and the comparison between Iran, what's happening, that has happened in Iran, and Egypt. And I was thinking about the virulently anti-Western positions of Ahmadinejad and Gaddafi, arguably to a lesser extent, and what that means for the movements within those countries, how they respond to that anti-Western discourse in terms of framing their arguments, and also how the West has to respond to those circumstances. So you have the great difference between challenging Ahmadinejad on the one hand, who's anti-Western, and Mubarak, who, by all accounts, was incredibly pro-Western for a number of good reasons. So how is that relationship?
Thank you. I think this is a very thought-provoking discussion so far, and I'm really finding it insightful. Thank you so much for coming here. My question is basically, it's one thing to fight for democracy, but it's another thing for people to be able to institute the democracy.